this is Carl from LunchboxSessions.com. Welcome to our series on the axial piston pump. We're going to build a pump together and find out what pieces are needed on the inside to have a complete pump, and we'll look at some of the basic features and functions. We're going to move on to find out all about pressure compensate. That's an important function popular on most piston pumps. We'll be moving on after that to a very tricky feature called load sensing, and we're also going to find out what makes these pumps wear out and fail. Last but not least, we're going to be making adjustments, and we're going to do some pump volumetric efficiency testing. I've got a few of my favorite piston pumps with me. I've got a model here by Parker that just has pressure compensating on it. I've got just the cap end from a Denison pump, a pressure compensated pump. I've got some leftover pieces, unfortunately, from a couple of different Sauer Danfoss pumps that didn't get the care and feeding they should have had. And this pump here is the one we're going to use for our study. This is a Rexroth pump, and while this pump here on the desk has two adjustments, we're going to work with a model that has only the one adjustment as we get started. Let's start with a cylinder barrel with 9 bores ready to receive the pistons. But first, let's put in a load spring and lock it in place, and here come 3 load pins. Now, a spherical washer. And here come our 9 pistons with their slipper pads right through a retaining ring and into their position in the cylinder barrel. Let's swivel that retaining ring with the slipper pads around the spherical washer a little bit just to see what type of important action we get there. Let's also have another look again at why that load spring is in the middle. Let's compress the pistons and slipper pads with those 3 load pins sitting under the spherical washer and see what's happening with that spring inside the cylinder barrel. Let's bring in the pump housing and install a shaft with shaft bearings. Now we'll bring in the bearing shells that will be needed for the swash plate. Here comes the swash plate. Now we're ready to install the complete rotating group onto the shaft. Now let's bring in the cap end of the pump and install a porting plate that has a bronze surface. Here comes our control piston, and of course we need a bias piston together with its spring. We're ready to assemble the pump. Let's install the cap end against the rest of the pump housing, and notice that as we're tightening down the 4 main cap screws, those last several turns of the screw indicate to us that we are compressing that load spring inside the cylinder barrel, because as the slipper pads are pressed hard against the swash plate and the retaining ring is pushing against the spherical washer and those 3 tiny load pins, that load spring in the middle of the cylinder barrel is making sure that we load the porting face of the cylinder barrel against the porting plate. Our pump is all assembled and ready to go. All that's needed now is our pump control. In this case, we're going to work with a basic pressure compensator. Here comes our housing, and next we bring in a spool along with a spring assembly. Here comes our adjustment screw, and we're ready to bolt that to the cap end of the pump. If there's anything left to install for accessories, we might choose to have an adjustment screw for a maximum volume adjustment, and down below here, a screw for a minimum volume adjustment. We'll get to that one later. Our pump is all assembled and we're ready to fire it up, turn the shaft, and of course, with our bias piston and spring pushing the swash plate to the maximum angle, that's what the bias piston does, we see that our pump is now displacing the maximum volume and the maximum flow rate. Oil is being drawn in on the inlet port and being pushed out on the pump outlet. Our pump is running and we're ready to move on. We've built up a piston pump, we've seen what parts are needed, and we've learned a little bit about their function. Next, we'll be moving on to the pressure compensator function. Thanks for watching.